So your hormones really need consistency, they need adequacy, and they don't need extremes because you want this to be sustainable for the long term. And if you think about it, you don't want to be on keto your whole life, most likely. You want to be able to enjoy, a cake with your kid on their birthday, or you want to be able to have order pizza on a stressful night when you just don't want to cook and be okay with it and not freak out about it having oils or those types of things with it, or it having gluten or something. Hello, welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync, the podcast where women looking to have a safe and confident transition off of birth control and heal their hormones naturally. Today, I'm going to be diving into something that I get asked a lot, and I would say this is more in social situations because when people, they ask what you do, and I tell them I'm a dietitian, and immediately, of course, if there's food involved, they're like, oh, well, don't judge me for what I'm eating, or you probably hate what I cooked, or, they have all these assumptions of how I expect people to eat, what I eat, and they're so far from the reality of what my relationship with food looks like, especially currently, or my philosophy as a dietitian and what I'm teaching my clients. And it's very overshadowed and influenced by diet culture of always eating super clean. And when people, again, hear that I'm a dietitian, they usually assume that I eat perfectly with no alcohol, no seed oils, no sugar, 100% organic. And that's not my life. At one time, it was. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is taking you on a little journey back in time of my relationship with food and how that kind of just transformed as I've gotten older, and how that really played a role in my hormone healing journey. So this isn't going to be oh, here's what I have for breakfast, here's what I have for lunch, here's what I have for dinner. But this is going to be more of a holistic, take a step back and come with me through my relationship with food across the years and how that's shaped my, I have the clearest skin I've ever had at this point in my life. I have 28-day cycles, and I barely even notice my periods here. I have very minimal to no cramping, and I have more energy. My mood is very stable, which as someone who's prone to anxiety is really big for me. So I'm the healthiest that I've ever been at 34 years old, recently 34. And, looking back, I think that if I were to see myself now, when I was in high school, in my 20s, in college, grad school, I would be like, oh, that's not healthy. You're not doing healthy things. But now I recognize what I was doing back then was actually not healthy, even though that's what I thought. So if we start from the beginning, I've talked about this, not the very beginning, we're not going back into when I was 3 years old, but if we started thinking about when my relationship with food first took a turn for the worst, that was in high school. So in high school, I had a little bit before that, in middle school, I guess we'll start there. In middle school, I used food for comfort. So I distinctly remember I was going to camp, summer camp, and I was just really shy, and it made me really nervous being around people I didn't know. I didn't like being away from home. And so I had dessert one day, had ice cream with chocolate chips. That's what my mom was having, and it just made me instantly feel better. And from that moment forward, I started using food to feel better. And I didn't have an eating disorder at that point in time. It was just I was, not eating the healthiest, but my mom cooked really healthy, and it was just one of those things. I definitely just didn't eat the greatest, even though my mom was cooking healthy. I would sneak candy and stuff like that, but nothing crazy. And so I gained some weight. I was a little bit overweight based on what, would be healthy for me at that point in time. And, that led to some body image stuff down the road when I started caring about how I looked and feeling not the greatest. And so I went the other end of the spectrum and just started eating really, really clean. I started exercising, and it started out healthy. But then if you've ever been in that, you know that you have to keep layering on. You have to keep eating healthier. You have to keep lowering your calories. You have to keep upping your exercise to keep losing weight. And I didn't know when to stop. And so I went too healthy, as I call it. But I thought, and I was praised for it being, this is healthy. Like, I was very regimented with, I worked out almost every single day. I used small plates to eat food to limit how much I was consuming, even if I was like hungry afterward. I had really rigid rules of like, I had to wait. I remember one of those is I had to wait at least 4 hours in between eating, even if I was hungrier before. And because I wasn't eating enough, I now realize, but I didn't know this at the time, but because I wasn't eating enough, I would get hungry like 2 hours after my meal. And I would make myself sit there with like a gnawing stomach, just waiting to eat my next meal, because based on what my brain was telling me, I couldn't eat unless it was 4 hours. So just rules like that. And again, if you've ever struggled with an eating disorder, disordered eating, I want to pause at this point and say, like, I will be sharing some like specifics around my eating disorder journey, but I'm not going to be going into very much detail because I know that can be triggering for some people. But if you're listening to this and at any point you get triggered by what I'm saying, just pause and, maybe now's not the right time, or come back to it. So that was high school, and that resulted in me losing my period. And I've talked about this in my very first podcast episode I did over a year ago, where I talked about like my journey and my career to get to where I'm at right now, and why I shifted my career to work with women with hormone issues and birth control, wanting to get off birth control. But I lost my period. We went to the doctor. Their only recommendation was, go on birth control. You'll get a period. You can stay on it till you want to get pregnant. You're going to college anyways. Might as well. They assumed I would be sexually active in college, which I wasn't. And so there was a lot of just like band-aiding of, we're not going to assess, well, why is she not missing her period? And my mom and I not connecting the dots, like didn't really think about it. Because again, I thought I was being healthy, and I was praised as being healthy. I was the healthy girl. And at that point in time, I was planning on going to college to be a dietitian. And I originally wanted to go to school to be a dietitian to help people with weight loss, because I thought I was doing it in a healthy way and wanted to help other people do that. So really interesting how my career started and how it's just pivoted so much since then. So we didn't see an issue with it. We didn't know we were told there was no long-term side effects of being on birth control. And I was put on that. And a few weeks later, I got my fake period, but I didn't know it was fake at the time. You aren't ovulating when you have a period if you're new here. And so I just went along with my day, and I kept doing the same thing. What was really going on is I did have an undiagnosed eating disorder. I see that now, but a lot of times eating disorders or disordered eating mask themselves as being healthy, especially when we live in a society that is so restricted with food. There's always a new diet. It's always push yourself at the gym. Don't miss a workout. You don't regret it. Those types of thoughts and sayings. And so that was high school, and that's where it all started. And that was when I got put on birth control, which was masking the true issue of me over-exercising, under-fueling my body. And then we go into college. And I will say that my relationship with food did shift when I went to college. Originally, I was very nervous about it because I would have to eat in a dining hall, right? Like, I was living in the dorms, and I'd have to eat at a dining hall. I went to school not where I'm from, and I didn't live at home. I didn't have control over that. So I was kind of forced to let loose a little bit because I didn't have control over, how much oil someone was using, or, it was just different than what I was used to. So I did let loose a little bit there, and I drank alcohol in college, was in a sorority. And so I was forced almost to eat less healthy, but it was in a good way because it was a life-fulfilling way, if that makes sense. So I was still on birth control at this time, and I will say that I was still exercising a lot. So while my relationship with food improved a little bit, there was more leniency there, I was still over-exercising. So you walk a ton in college. I went to a big university and was walking at least 10,000 steps a day, plus exercising on top of that. And I very much relied on cardio. I was like the cardio girl, because to me, in my head, the sweatier the better. If you're not sore, if you're not sweaty, the workout wasn't worth it. And I just didn't know about weightlifting. I felt intimidated to weightlift. So it was very much cardio focused, calorie burning activities. So I remember I would never miss a morning workout, even if I was up late studying or I'd gone out the night before. And still at that time, I thought that was just healthy. I thought that was disciplined. I felt better after I worked out. And that's where you just have to toe the line, right? Of like, okay, yeah, sometimes it does feel better to get up and work out, but at the same time, I was very rigid with it, and there was no flexibility with that, and I would feel bad if I didn't work out. So the exercise obsession was still there, and I fell in love with spinning, the bicycle spinning. And so I became certified in group fitness to teach spin classes. So my last 2 years, I taught spin classes there. And I really liked that. I really enjoyed that at the time. But that added on top, I was teaching 2 classes a week in the morning. And then sometimes I would sub on Saturdays. So it was just very, very active and, just burning through a lot of energy and eating more, but probably not eating as much as I should given my activity level. And then after that, we went to grad school. So I went to grad school. I was still teaching group fitness. And at that point, that's when I, really shifted and I wanted to work with eating disorders because I understood that my relationship with food was not the greatest in my past, and it had improved quite a bit. And so I shifted from weight loss, realizing that, okay, like people who focus on weight loss oftentimes focus on the wrong things. It can become obsessive. It can become unhealthy. I want to help other people heal their relationship with food like I had healed my relationship with food. So I never got formal treatment for an eating disorder. I probably would have benefited from it because, as you will see, this was definitely years of a journey of healing my hormones, healing my relationship with food and exercise. But it was something that eventually I was able to work through on my own, and it could have been a lot faster and a lot easier, I think, if I would have had professional support. So in grad school, still exercising, but I was more flexible with that. Really, food kind of took a backseat. I was very busy going through my internship, doing my master's program. And so it was still a part of my life, but it wasn't as much a part of my life, if that makes sense. So I would say my relationship with food in grad school was better. Exercise was better, but it was still a focus for me because that was my life too with getting a master's degree in nutrition was healthy eating, okay, and exercise and being healthy. So I still very much had the identity of, Taylor's the healthy one. Taylor's the one that's like gonna meal prep on Sundays and has her workout routine and all of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't as rigid, I would say. And then after that, I got when I graduated from grad school, I got a job working with eating disorders, which was my dream job. And that is where, of course I was working with people with eating disorders. So I had to have a healthy relationship with food. And a lot of people who work with eating disorders have struggled in the past with their own relationship with food. So it's really, really important that you heal your relationship with food and your exercise relationship before you start counseling others, of course. And so, I would say, like I mentioned in grad school, that's when really it started to shift where I had it was kind of my identity, but then I would say towards the end, it really wasn't. But I was very very passionate about more of like the psychology around it, around your relationship with food and how it's not just about the nutrition, but it's about flexibility and it's about how you are, you can't let food rule your day, or you can't let a missed workout ruin your day, for example. And that's what I was teaching other clients when I got into my first real world job as a dietitian. So I absolutely loved it. And I was still teaching group fitness at this point in time. I had moved to Columbus, where I am now, and that was where my job was. And at some point along the way, I just figured out that I started just getting really exhausted from my workouts. Like I was teaching spin and I ended up getting certified in teaching body pump, which is weightlifting. So I was doing that quite a bit. And when I first moved here, it was really helpful because it helped me meet people. It gave me structure, gave me something to do outside of work because I didn't know anyone when I first moved here. And so it was beneficial, but then it got to a point where I was doing all of that. I was in a new relationship that I really enjoyed and was looking to, spend more time with him versus spending time working out on the weekends. And I also was working my full-time job. And so at some point I just felt really exhausted and I lost the passion for teaching. And so I made the decision, which was a really hard decision for me. But once I made it, I felt so much lighter and like, yes, this was a good decision. But I decided to stop teaching group fitness. And that was a really pivotal moment for me because that was a big piece of my identity. Like I had spent so much time. I remember I would spend hours making playlists for my spin classes, hours memorizing the body pump routines. And a lot of my weekends were spent at the gym teaching or taking classes and like talking to members and stuff. And so I was really scared that it would I was scared that I would regret it. But like I said, I, was in a relationship. I was making more friends here. My job was more important to me. And I just wanted to spend my time doing other things. And I was getting older. When I was younger, I had more energy and I had more of a drive to do those types of workouts. And as I got older, I was like, this just doesn't align with what I want to do, how I want to spend my time, and what feels best for my body at this point. So this is something I talk with my clients about a lot, is both with food and with fitness, what that looks like for you is going to have seasons. And maybe within a year, maybe within a couple years, right? Like I'm thinking about even now, like my workouts they're pretty consistent right now. But like sometimes I'm more in the zone of like when it's really, really cold, like it's going to be -1 degrees tomorrow here. I want to do more like hot yoga. I want to do more saunaing. I'm walking a little bit less outside. I still have a dog that he's very regimented and he loves the snow. So we still do walk him quite a bit, more than I would. So kudos to Blue. He gets me out and moving outside when it's, really, really cold out. But there are other times when it's like, I really feel like these more intense workouts, or I really am like in the weightlifting groove and you're walking more because it's nicer outside. That's okay. These things don't have to stay stagnant. And it's the same thing with food. Like you're going to have seasons, right? Like where you're traveling more, or it's the holidays, for example. I'm recording this mid-January, right after the holidays. And I've been talking about this a lot with clients of it's okay if you have seasons where you're eating differently. Maybe you're drinking more alcohol than usual, but that's living. We can't expect ourselves to eat the same things all the time and for everything to be, fit perfectly into this what we think is the best kind of template, cookie cutter plan based on what we've been told is healthy. It's going to ebb and flow. And then likewise, there are going to be times like I know when I come off of holidays or when I come back from vacation, I'm like, ooh, I'm excited to sweat. I'm excited to, detox in a healthy way, right? When I say detox, I mean like go on my sauna, do some hot yoga, use my castor oil pack, and eat more beets and like arugula, bitter foods. Like those are my things for detoxing. My body craves that. And so part of this comes back to like trust too. And that was something I built over the span is like I said, this wasn't an overnight thing. This was truly a several year transformation of like slowly but surely building trust with myself in my relationship with food. And the next big thing that happened was I quit birth control. So I was working my job as an eating disorder dietitian. I'd worked my way up to a manager position at that point. I'd been there for about 6 years. And at that point, I was 28 and I listened to a podcast and I learned about all the negative side effects of being on birth control long term and that I wasn't having a period on birth control. And I was like, wow, I did research and I decided I want to get off. I wanted to make sure I was having a true period. I thought I had a good relationship with food and with exercise, given all this work I had done, but I wanted to make sure my body agreed. And the biggest way you can know if your body agrees is by not taking birth control and seeing if you get a natural period and natural ovulation. And so, well, there is only natural ovulation, but you probably know what I mean. Natural period with ovulation. And so I stopped and it was fine at first. And then several months in, that's when my acne started flaring really bad. I always struggled with acne, but it was the worst when I came off birth control. My anxiety was really high. I did get a period, but I later learned it was anovulatory. And I just felt really stuck. So for several years, I tried to figure out exactly what was causing my acne, why I was so anxious. Was really doing all the right things, eating really healthy, just topicals, dermatology appointments, going to therapy. Like I literally did everything. I have tons of other podcasts about that, so I'm not going to dive too much into this. But the point is that this eventually I found functional nutrition. I pursued functional nutrition training with a dietitian who focuses on or specializes in skin conditions like chronic acne. And that's where I got the information. I really started to look at food even more differently. I would say when I was in college and high school, it was very much like the lower calorie, the better, like, veggies, veggies, veggies. And then grad school and my first job with eating disorders, it was more of like flexibility, right? Like letting yourself have pizza without a salad, having dessert when you want it and not feeling bad about it, drinking a glass of wine. Like I didn't go to the opposite end of the spectrum at all, but it was much more flexible and focusing on intuitive eating. And then when I got the nutrition, the functional nutrition training, it added another layer of looking deeper at like minerals, detox support, gut health. And that unearthed like a whole new world of nutrition that I had not been exposed to before, even with a grad degree, a master's degree in nutrition. So it was really revolutionary for me because I just dove right in, and like it made me look at food as like, okay, this is like nourishment for my body, which I knew, but it was another additional layer of just blending those two worlds of like, yes, it's important to have salad and I talked about like detox foods like beets and collagen and protein, but then it's also, I learned about like saturated fat and like how it's important to have saturated fat and how having too low of cholesterol levels is bad for your hormones. Really different stuff than I learned in traditional dietetic school. And this process and this training is what I use to heal my own hormones after birth control. And it has resulted in me continuing to improve my own relationship with food even more so, and my own relationship with exercise. So all of these things just layered on top of each other. And I know it's really, really scary. And this is where having an expert in your corner is so, so helpful, because so many women are in the exact same situation as me. They're, because there's so much noise around what they should be eating or not eating or exercising or how much, they sometimes fall into the same trap I did of being too overly healthy and not eating enough. I can think of several of my clients who fall into this boat, and they're not intentionally under eating or they're not intentionally over exercising, but they are, and they need someone from the outside kind of looking in, an expert who's been there and who has healed their own relationship with food and also knows all the facts and has been through these years of like just self-education and self-experience and clinical expertise to tell them, hey, let's add some butter here. Let's, add a side of carbohydrates. And so what balanced eating looks like for me now, or what I eat looks like for me now, and what I teach my clients is first and foremost having consistent meals throughout the day. So eating within 1 hour of waking up and every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day. So usually for most people, this results in you should be having at least 3 meals and then 1 to 3 snacks throughout the day, depending on your activity level, depending on, when you're eating your meals, depending on hunger levels, obviously. And you want to make sure you're balancing these things. So right now there's a huge, huge focus on protein, which yes, protein's very important. And I hate when people are like 30 grams of protein, because like, I don't know. I just feel like that's so rigid. And if someone's going from not eating any protein to being like pushed to do 30 grams of protein, like I don't eat 30 grams of protein at breakfast, but I do have a decent amount of protein. I maybe have like 15 to 20 grams, I would guess. But to me, that's perfect, So that's where it's like we have to be really personalized to that person. So I certainly eat more protein at my breakfast than I used to. I used to just do oatmeal with milk, banana, and peanut butter. And now I add some collagen and I add some like extra, like some whey protein in there it's like Capra whey protein. It's not like whey protein powder, but it has a bunch of like minerals in it and stuff. So I definitely bump it up. And, carbs and fats are really so important for hormone health, but they often get missed because of this push for protein. And this is where, most people who diet, they don't do it for long term, because only 5% of people, research shows this statistically, only 5% of dieters who start a diet actually stick with it long term and experience long-term success, because they're not realistic, and our body needs carbs, proteins, and fats and enough calories. And so when you're walking around so malnourished, you're not only going to feel awful, but it's going to impact your hormones. It's going to result in acne and chronic skin conditions. It's going to cause missing or painful periods or mood swings or PMS. But those are things that we don't often hear about. We hear about, oh, well, just, take this supplement or focus on gut health or go on birth control. But the deeper layers, it all starts with making sure you're nourished. You have the vitamins and minerals your body needs. Those are cofactors to every single cell in the body. And they're important for metabolism, which literally keeps your body going. And then, of course, like supporting your minerals, supporting your digestion. This is where functional testing can come in to really fine tune this. And then flexibility. So perfection is the enemy of sustainability. If you're so, and this is why I drink alcohol on occasion. Do I drink every single night? Of course not. Do I drink once a week? Sometimes, but I would say right now, and again, this might change during certain points in my life, but right now it's like maybe a couple times a month, and it's very much more social. And I'm like 1 to 2 drinks is all I really want or I need at this point. That was very different before, and that's okay. It will maybe change. I don't know. I eat dessert. I don't avoid seed oils like the plague. That's another thing I want to mention here is that there's a huge, in my world now with the functional nutrition, there's so many people who are like, no seed oils, those are the devil. And I don't cook with canola oil. I do, avocado and olive oil because, I do believe that if you have too many seed oils, then that can cause inflammation in your body. But sometimes if I want some Lay's potato chips with a burger or something, or a sandwich or something at lunch, I'll have some because I'm not constantly consuming them. I'm not constantly consuming. For the most part, I eat a very whole foods diet that are low in seed oils, or I don't freak out when I go out to eat and if they use seed oils, for example. So this is where you just have to be very realistic, and I realize that everything in moderation is okay. Everything in moderation is okay. And your choices change day to day, season by season, year by year. And so you have to be okay with just being flexible with it. If you're not, the stress of being healthy is going to be worse for your health than the food that you eat or the amount that you exercise, because stress is literally the thing that kills people. It's the hardest thing, to change. And it's so pervasive for so many of us. The other thing too is that perfection, can turn into an eating disorder. My eating disorder switch was flipped when I went on that diet when I was in high school, right? And it was very hard for me to reverse, and it took many, many years. And these are things that I'm not just saying that this has happened. There's like research around this with people who start innocently enough, not eating enough, and it ends up being a full-blown eating disorder. So your hormones really need consistency, they need adequacy, and they don't need extremes, because you want this to be sustainable for the long term. And if you think about it, you don't want to be on keto your whole life, most likely. You want to be able to enjoy, a cake with your kid on their birthday, or you want to be able to have order pizza on a stressful night when you just don't want to cook, and be okay with it and not freak out about it having oils or, those types of things with it, or it having gluten or something. So this is a full circle moment. And this is something, again, I posted on my Instagram a while ago about how I went from the healthy, disciplined girl who had 6 a.m. workouts and was meal prepping every Sunday to the girl who, skips workouts sometimes, more does the weightlifting and walking, and eats non-organic sometimes, and that's okay. And I'm the healthiest I've ever been. And I got a lot of responses from people just saying thank you for sharing that, because especially as a dietitian, people we are leaders in the world of nutrition. And when there's so much noise out there, as I've mentioned quite a few times at this point, it can be really, really confusing and really hard to navigate. And so my goal is to pass this along to you, and also share that one big reason that so many women are struggling with hormone imbalances and we're being put on birth control and then coming off, and just their body is in chaos like mine was, is because their nutrition is not where it needs to be, but not for lack of trying. And it really requires personalization, and it requires the functional lab work to identify, what are things that your body needs that you didn't know, or that maybe contradict what you thought you needed or what you thought was healthy. And so this isn't just my job. It's really a transformation that I needed in my life that I now pass on to every single client that I work with. And the final thing I'll say is that, clearing your skin, having consistent monthly cycles, stable mood, pain-free periods doesn't come with restriction. It comes with clarity, strategy, and support. And if this is something that you're craving, you want a clear, personalized plan to stop birth control, clear your skin, have better periods without cutting out the foods you love, this is exactly what I do in my one-on-one coaching programs. So if you are interested in that, feel free to book a free call. We can chat and see if it's the perfect fit working together. And if nothing else, I hope you gained from this episode that healing your hormones, meeting the nutrition goals that you have, stopping birth control, it doesn't require you to restrict foods. That's what a lot of people think. They think that I have to cut out dairy, I have to cut out sugar, like this is what's causing my acne, or this is what's causing my painful period. And most of the time it's not about the food, it's about the deeper imbalances underneath that your body is trying to get you to see. So without further ado, I hope this episode was helpful. And until next time, stay nourished, friends.